Top reasons why projects fails and how you can avoid it. My name is Guilherme and I'm a project management specialist. I help professionals to become successful project managers. And just to let you know, what does that mean in practice? Well, I help people, for example, if people are struggling to start their project management career, I help them to prepare a CV, for example, to review their CV, to understand how a good CV should be well prepared. Then they apply for positions. Then I help them, for example, to prepare for these interviews to make sure that they can get their project management position they want. But war, this is one of the ways I help them to succeed. Other ways to help them succeed is I help teaching them the project management foundations and how they can apply that in practice to make sure that they can get more value for their projects. So I had a case, for example, from a mentoring that a company itself reached out because they were struggling in their project because they did not have clarity on the execution, they did not know where the project was going. So my job there was to guide the junior project manager in how to put the structure in place, how he could put a report in place to make sure that he gained transparency to the organization in things that needs to be done, in prioritizing with the team, but also how the project is progressing. Those are different ways I can help people with. And of course, there's more examples, but just so you to understand when I mention that I help professionals to become successful project managers. So it's from the start or even during the execution of a specific project. Before I talk about the content here today, I want to remind you this is a part of the warm up for the Project Management Summit. The Project Management Summit, it's a free event I'm going to make. I'm going to make 4 classes talking about how to develop your project management skills and how to develop your project management career. Everything there is free. What you need to do is go in the link in the description here and subscribe. There you're going to get the information by email and also if you join the groups by WhatsApp. What I ask you, it's also there's a survey there. You're going to get the link. Please answer the survey because it helps me to understand your challenges, where you are, and also it helps me to prepare a content that will better support you into your journey. I already talked too much. Let's jump into the content then. So what you see here on the screen is the PMI. PMI stands for Project Management Institute. It's the biggest institutional organization around the world. They do research on project management. And this is the result of what they call the Pulse of Profession of 2021. There they send a survey for thousands of professionals around the world asking what are the main reasons why the projects fail, how many projects failed in their organization in the past 12 months, and so on. And they get everything together. They analyze the data and they create a report and share here. And this is the result from what I'm sharing here. So what I'm sharing here, it's not something that I guess, I think it's not about my opinion, it's data from thousands of professionals around the world. So, what are the top 5 reasons why projects failure? And again, this is data from thousands of project managers from hundreds or thousands of organizations and industries around the world. The first top reason what you're going to see there is changes around organization priorities, poor requirements gathering, changing project objectives, poor upfront planning, and inadequate vision and project goal. And let's talk about those things. Let me explain what happened with why those are reasons why project fail, and also I want to give you some guidance in how you can avoid that. First of all, that you see very clear. It's of course, and I'm going to focus on the items just before I talk about in the items 2, 3, 4, and 5. Why? Because changes in organization priorities might not be on the control area, on the control zone of a project manager. If something happened with the market of the company, there's a change coming from top down. That's something that you cannot control. Maybe that depending on the organization, there are some items that you can influence, but that's not something that you can control. So I'm going to focus in what you can do as a project manager, in what you can control there. For one, then first clear per requirement gathering. What do I mean by that? Let me make a very simple analogy. It's like if I ask you, say, I want to buy a trip for my family to take a holiday there. And I ask you to organize this type of trip because it's a type of project doing that. And then you ask me, okay, what? Then basically you ask me how many people are going this trip. I say it's 4 people, and then I say 4 people. I want to have a holiday, a beach holiday, and then I tell you, okay, that's my budget. So what would happen in this case? Then you end up booking me a very nice hotel in the Maldives, and for 4 people on my budget, and I come back saying, hey, but I don't want to go to the Maldives because right now I'm located in the Netherlands and the traveling time to the Maldives is too long. So I don't want to, from a 1 week holiday, staying traveling for, I don't know, for at least one day if you count back and forth. And then I say, then basically your project failed because you did not understood the requirements that I have. And you might say, okay, but you haven't said that before. But here's the trick. You need to take the ownership of your project manager. Is the project manager responsibility and of course the team responsibility, it's understand the requirements besides what's being said. Meaning that when I say a beach holiday, you could ask, okay, but you want a beach holiday? There's an entire world. I can go to Thailand, I can go to the Maldives, or I can go to Greece, or I can go to Italy, or I can go to Spain, or I can go to Portugal, things that are closer for me, or I can go even to Brazil because of course I'm from Brazil. So it's very important that you do not make assumptions and you make sure that you have clear requirements. And if they're not clear, you need to make sure that you find a way to get those clear requirements. In the example, on the analogy of the traveling, for example, what could you do differently? If you forget about those requirements, because let's be honest here, nobody will be perfect. That's common that sometimes you do not remember that it's difficult to detail all types of requirements for a lot of projects. For some are more easier, for others are difficult, much more difficult. What could you have done in this analogy, in this example that I just mentioned? Well, before booking something for the Maldives, you could have sent me some options saying, I have Maldives, I have Thailand, I have Italy, I have Spain, and I have Portugal. Then if you would have sent me 5 options for holding this hypothetical example here, I would say, oh, but those 2 are too far, I don't want it. Then I would constrain your search there, which is already a good thing to do. So that's a way to gather requirements. Yeah, let me put here in a different type of project. If you are building a house and you are trying to get the requirements from the owner of the house or whoever is buying the house, what do you do? Well, you can send basically a design from the house, a mock-up, and send, do check this. Please make your comments here. Because I would say, oh, I want a bigger bedroom, I want a bigger bathroom, I want a 2 store house, I want a pool, and whatever other thing that you are going to get as a comment there. And more you have this interaction with your customer, and or this, maybe it's not a customer, maybe it's an internal external customer, higher the chances are that you are going to refinate your requirements. And that's also why Scrum works so well for projects that they don't have clear requirements. Like it's very difficult to understand the use, for example, of a completely new application, a completely new software. That's why you build some pieces and you ask the users to try it. So in practice, that's one of the ways you are going to clarify your requirements and you are going to get your requirements more clear. And of course, for engineering project, you can have a specification, but also maybe you can do a mock-up, you can do prototypes, and that's how you're going to start to clarify your requirements. But what's very important for you here that you always look for a way to clarify those requirements. So I just give you some examples, but as a standard, a way of thinking, you should not make any assumption. And understand again, your goal as a project manager is to deliver value. So if in the case in the analogy that I did for a trip, you're a travel agency, and I say, but that's not what I want, and of course might be legal implications and for buying and so thing. Instead of saying, yeah, instead of complaining with your customer, take the be proactive there, take the ownership, sir, say, okay, so I misunderstood your requirements. So let me try again and let's give another try with a nicer step. Because if you do that, you are building a relationship with your customer. Because if you said, yeah, that's not what you told me, and if you start to complain that, then you're deteriorating your relationship with your customer. Here, and your customer can be internal or external, and that does not help. That will not help you to deliver value for your project. The other one is changing the project objectives. The other type of reason why project failure. You can imagine, of course, if you do not have a clear requirement, there's a chance that your objective is not clear. So it's your goal, try to make your objective as clear and as simple as possible. For example, a project that had a very clear goal and a very compelling goal. Like in the 60s, when the US wanted to go to the moon, the American president at the time, John Kennedy, he settled the goal. We want to go to the moon and come back in a safe way and still in this decade, in before the next 10 years. So it was a very clear and compelling goal. Why? Because with a very clear goal, that gives you a north to everything that you need to execute. So every time they were working on this project, they would ask, does it help us to put the man in the moon? Yes or no? If the question is no, then probably that's not something that you should be working on. That's not a priority in the project. So having this example of clear objectives that will help you to execute your project in a right way. And then, of course, if you have this clear objective there, and here I'm going to connect with the vision and with the project goal, because the objective and the goal, they need to go together, and of course, and they need to be clear. That is the only way that your project is going to succeed. Otherwise, you're going to end up in the analogy that I just made about the traveling, where you're going to book something for Maldives, and I say, I don't want to go there, it's too far. Or it's too far based on the time that I have to go. So understanding their requirements, so gathering the requirements in a proper way, helps you to make sure that you also understand the objective and you have a very good and clear vision and project goal. Without that, it's going to be difficult. So I just mentioned to you that your goal as a project manager is to deliver value to your organization, to deliver value for your project, to your team, because the goal of the project is to deliver value for the organization. So when you talk about objective, vision, and goal, you are trying to define what's value. What's value for the organization? Why the company wants to execute that? And understanding there, it's very important here. And in some organizations, this is going to be easier because you say, I have a business case, I have a customer that wants these at that point to use it. In some case, you might not have this clear, but it's important that you, as a project manager, you take the initiative, be proactive, you take the ownership to try to steer the project in the right direction, to avoid that you end up in the 35% of the projects that are considered project failure with the budget lost. This is the worst type of project that you can work on because you're going to put a lot of work. Everyone, no one's going to like it. You might have critics in the end that you are going to, the company will lose money there, and no one is going to be happy in the end of that. That's a situation that you don't want. That's why I mentioned that understanding those causes of failure, and you see that a lot of those causes, they're at least the ones that I'm talking so far, they're very connected with communication and stakeholder management. That's definitely when you look for a lot of research that is out there. Communication is very commonly one of the main challenges that you need to work on because requirements gathering, that's communication. Understanding the project objective, because if you have clarity up front, and even though when the objective change might be because of organization change, so there's times that they change and you cannot do anything about that, but there are a lot of times they are changing because of lack of clarity. That's why you say inadequate vision or project goal. So if you do not have a good goal, you're not going to have a good objective. If you not have a clear goal, you're not going to have a clear objective. And communication, even though it sounds simple if you're not working in a team right now, but I can tell you, let me try to put this in to make another analogy here when you talk about communication. If you're in a relationship or with a friend, with your parents, with your brothers and sisters, I'm sure there was a situation when someone said something and you understand something that was not exactly what this person mean, and then you end up not converging. And the communication can, this type of communication can lead to discussions. It can lead, for example, if you agree to meet someone, you meet the person in the wrong place, in the wrong time, you will have a different understanding what type of party that you are going, and all those small things in communication that you face in your personal life, then of course they are reflected on a business level. And why does it happen? Well, because we are different people, we have different personalities, we have different cultures, we have different languages, we have different backgrounds, we have different uh, histories of life, and all those things they are going to influence how you understand, how you perceive the information that's going to be sent to you. If you think about when you talk about communication, basically your brain will decode whatever you get in your five senses. And how your brain is going to decode it, it can be very different and it can vary a lot. There's also, I'm not sure if this is a kind of play that was around in all type of the world, but when I was a kid, then in the 90s, now you can have an idea about my age, and or end of 80s, early 90s. There was a play that we did that was called Phone Without Wireless, because of course in the 80s, all the phones they had a cable there. Basically, how it works, you had a line and someone would say something for a first person, then you have a lot of people in the middle, and those people would say to the next one what they understood, and to the next, then the next one would say what they understood from the first person and would tell for the next one, to the next one, to the next one. And then in the end, the person who would just mention what's the message. And then, because of all those persons, they were processing the message in their own way based on their own understanding, they would pass to the next one. You would see that there was a huge gap in how in the first message and in the end message, just because of the difference and the challenges in the communication there. And if you do not believe me, you can do this exercise yourself. That's why investing in communication, not making assumptions, confirming your communication is so important here, because that will influence how you're going to gather your requirements, that will influence in your objectives, that will influence in your project goal. And if those items are not clear for the project manager, they are not clear for the team, they are not clear for the customer, they are not clear for the stakeholders, and every different person has a different version on that, there's a big chance that you're going to have troubles in your project. And of course, does not mean that it's impossible to overcome there. But what I'm showing you here that the data shows thousands of people, literally thousands of people. I think last time I checked, more than 20,000 of people around the world participate in this research here from different countries, from people from the United States, people from Europe, people from South America, people from Asia, people from Australia, from New Zealand, and all those things are compiled. So this is the data from all the around the world. So this is key to make sure that you can succeed in your project. And if you do not fully understand the challenge here that you are facing, you are going to continue to make assumptions, and then you are going to continue to face challenges. So not making assumptions, it's a very critical item here, because then you are going to start to work on confirming the information to clear the requirements. And there's a different ways to do that. For example, if you're talking about communication, when I talk about requirements, I give you some examples how you do it. If you're talking about communication, you can ask me to you can ask to confirm if the message was received, saying that uh, you can say, can you rephrase what I just said, just to make sure I was able to communicate properly with you. There's a different ways why you can do that. You can write it down. You can try to make it more concrete with an image, with a picture, with a design. Those are ways that you're going to use to try to achieve that. And the other item that still that I not discussed it yet, and I'm going to talk about right now, is poor upfront planning. Let me first start saying that the planning, that's why you see planning as one of performance domains in the PMBOK 7 edition. Planning is required for all types of projects. You should never see a project without planning. And I know that someone will be thinking, but what if I'm using Agile there? Well, if you're using Scrum, I can tell you there's an event in Scrum called sprint planning. What do you do in the sprint planning? You plan the sprint. If you're using waterfall, you have an initial effort to plan to understand the requirements to execute a project. So in all types of projects, you are going to see planning. Planning is always important. What changes depending on the type of project, depending on the organization, depending how you are doing, is the planning effort. Why? Because if you are planning a house, it's much more easier to make a concrete, clear scope of what you need to do based on the requirements that you have. But if you are planning something that's very abstract, for example, a marketing campaign that can be perceived for some people in a good way, for another people in a bad way, it's much more difficult to have clear requirements and to have a fixed scope there. So, but the plan is always going to be there anyway. What's going to change is the type of effort depending on the situation. That's why I mentioned this is a performance domain. Why? Because you need to understand what type of project that you have, what type of industry, what type of company, what are your constraints, or what are the what I like to call the boundary conditions of a project, what are the constraints around a project that will guide you in what type of framework or will help you in selecting a framework. And when you are selecting a framework, if it's waterfall, Scrum, Kanban, Lean, XP, or whatever, you always need to understand with together with those frameworks, there's always a planning effort together with that. So there's always some type of planning that you need. And why poor for planning it's a problem? Well, because if you just jump into execution mode without even understanding what needs to be done there, then you have a problem. For example, again, if you are using Scrum, you have the sprint planning where you're going to have a sprint. What's the sprint goal there? And then you're going to understand, okay, what's the goal, what we need to achieve, and what are the items that we are going to tackle to achieve this sprint goal here in the next 1 or 2 weeks. If you don't have this kind of clarity there, then you are going to have trouble. Because if you don't have a goal, And if you don't have a goal, you cannot have a proper prioritization there. And you're going just to select whatever you think you're going to do the best. But then you are going to struggle to execute the project in a proper way. It's exactly the same thing in the example I mentioned about the travel. That's why I like this example, because I think this analogy it's very straightforward for everyone. Let's go back to the analogy. So in the planning phase, if I tell you I want to make a trip with my family, your planning effort, minimum planning effort, it must be how many people do you have in your family, how many kids, where you want to go, and what's your budget. That's your starting point. Even though you say, okay, if you get those items, you have some constraints, then you can select few options so we can discuss it again. Even though if you want to have a minimum effort of planning, it's always required, because if you do not have a minimum effort of planning, you are not going to have a minimum understanding of the requirements from what you need to do in your next step. Maybe your next step is a sprint of 1 week or 4 weeks. Maybe your next step is to move into a design phase, but without this minimal amount of requirement, you are going to struggle. And those failures in projects and these poor project managements, they get to a level which is getting better, of course, but that you see even that the research showed that for almost $10 invested by companies, almost $1 is wasted, varying a bit depending on the project management maturity of the company. The ones that have a good maturity, that goes to 90 cents. The ones with bad maturity, that probably goes to nine. That goes go to $1.1. But can you imagine if I give you $100 and then you take $10 there, you and you throw away in the garbage? If I tell you you have $100 here to go to the supermarket, but by the way, just wait here. You take $10 and you throw in the garbage. That money you cannot use because it's waste. That's the big impact that companies have, and that's the big positive impact that you can cause with good project management maturities. Good project management is always a way to add value for organization. Why? Because you reduce the waste here. In that case that I just mentioned to you about the supermarket, that means instead of having $90 to buy in the supermarket, you have $100 to buy in the supermarket. Okay, you can argue that never going to be 100%, but that's a different discussion. But then you also make sure that you have more projects achieving their goals, more projects being successful. So it's key for you to develop your project management maturity. It's key for you to develop your project management skills, because then you're going to avoid that, you're going to fall in those pitfalls here. And that's why that's one of the reasons I created my own project management development program. And I created this to be a program, which is a different from a training. Why a program? Because then I have 1 year program to help people to grow and develop their own skills. That's why I create a mentoring program, because this can be very impactful in the world. You can imagine how amount of money we are talking about, yearly investment, billions, trillions of dollars in a global scale, and we are talking about so billions of dollars wasted here. So it's focusing and understanding those causes of failure then can help you. First, if you understand it is a cause of failure, you can come with a countermeasure. Some of those countermeasures, that's what I also mentioned during the day today. And if you are working on those countermeasures, you can mitigate the risk that your project is going to fail because you do not have clear requirements, that you do not, that your objectives are changing, that you do not have a planning. So take the examples I mentioned, take the few tools or few steps I gave you to avoid those reasons why a project, those reasons for a project to fail. Create countermeasures for that in your own project. For example, if you're executing a project, there are requirements. Discuss with your team how you can make sure that you confirm requirements, how you can make sure that you can get a positive sign that you are moving to the right direction. how you can make sure that your planning effort is enough from what you are doing there. Those are important things, and that will make a big difference in your career. But why? Because if you are taking those countermeasures here, you're adding value for your organization because you are mitigating risks, you are avoiding issues for the future, you are solving problems, and all those kinds of things will help you, the organization, to see more value in you. Then you are going to get more opportunities to grow. Growing meaning having high profile promotions, high profile projects, better salaries, and more the organization see the value in you, more your salary that you're going to be able to get, money that you're going to make. Why? Because the organization pays you, consider the amount of value that you can add. If you can add $200,000 of value for organization, the organization will pay you easily $100,000. Or if they not, you can find another place in the market that they are going to pay you. But you always need to make sure that the value that you deliver is much higher than the money that you're going to make. If you are adding millions of dollars for organization, I'm sure that you can find an organization that are going to pay you very well. That's also why Warren Buffett, if you don't know him, that's probably one of the biggest investors of all time, and he's a billionaire there. He says that you can never overpay for performance. If you have a good CEO, a good manager that delivers a lot of value, cannot overpay that, because usually if you are paid, I don't know, hundreds of thousands there, if you are a very good project manager and then you are paid, I don't know, $100,000 there, $150,000 a year there, but you deliver 300, 500, half a million of value, even more depending on the size of the project that you are working on, the company will never be thinking on why I'm keeping this person here. What is your value? They know it. But if you are get a salary of $100,000 and the value that you deliver are very low, you have a lot of projects failing, you have a lot of not under bad project management practices, low project management maturity, the chances are that or either the organization is going to fire you, that's the word that we live on, or will replace you, or will block your growth depending how you go there. So this is key for your career to make sure that you can be a successful project manager. And I mentioned to you, those are the different ways when I talk about I help you to be a successful project manager. Those are different ways I'm doing that. And of course, in the program I have, can go much more deeper into content, but also in the mentoring session, it can be much more customized for your needs. Make sure you like and share this video here because that helps me to understand the value of what I'm doing here. That helps me to understand that you see the value in the content, but also helps the social media to deliver this content to more people can learn project management here, and also that helps us to reduce this waste of money that we have around the world there because of poor project management performance. Make sure also, if you understand what I just mentioned here about the fails, comment in this video here, I got it, because that helps me to confirm that at least my message is being delivered there. And of course, make sure you follow me for more content. Every week I'm sharing more content here on YouTube, but also on Instagram, where I share daily content that you can understand, very small pieces that you can digest in one day. But I also have a Q&A box that's open there every day, so you can ask all type of project management questions there. Don't forget, again, this is to subscribe for the Project Management Summit. Event is free. It will be 4 classes where I'm going to help you to progress your project management career. The only thing that you need to do if you are interested is subscribe. I hope I'm going to see you there, and I'm going to see you soon here.